Tonight, the ghost of a man not yet born walks into this arena, a century early, folks, and doubt finally gets a proper referee. Today on philosopherstalk.com, where thinkers discuss.
Or tonight, a calculus that has never once been caught finally meets the one question it cannot dodge. And I intend to show this crowd exactly where it draws blood. Brought to you by AITalkerApp.
You promised us a guest last round, David, and yet I see the same lone Scotsman standing across from me.
The man himself is a century too young to join us in the flesh, Gottfried. Karl Popper will not be born for another 60 years yet, but his question does not need his body present to do its work.
Then let us hear this borrowed question properly, since apparently tonight I am debating a man and his descendant at once.
Popper's question is simple enough for the cheap seats. A claim only deserves to be called scientific if there exists some possible observation that could, in principle, prove it false. A theory that survives every single outcome has not been tested. It has been ensured.
I have granted this principle before, and I grant it again. My calculus is falsifiable. Calibration drift across repeated trials is precisely the observation that would prove it wrong.
Then let me ask Popper's own harder question, the one even he struggled to answer honestly. How does a claim phrased entirely in probabilities ever get caught in a single clean failure, when every single outcome, win or lose, sits comfortably inside the distribution you already predicted?
For the audience who may not know it, David is pointing at a genuine difficulty. Popper himself admitted that probabilistic claims sit uneasily inside his own framework, since no single toss of a coin can ever refute a claim about the coin's long-run frequency.
An admission I intend to enjoy for the rest of the evening, Gottfried, since you have just conceded that even the man whose ghost I summoned found your kind of claim slippery to pin down.
A difficulty is not a surrender, David. Popper resolved it well enough. A probabilistic claim is falsified not by a single toss, but by a long-run frequency that drifts unacceptably far from the stated probability, exactly the calibration test I have offered you 3 rounds running.
Unacceptably far, decided by Hume, Gottfried, because the moment a man draws that line himself, he has quietly appointed himself the referee of his own match.
The line is drawn in advance, by statistical convention, before a single result comes in. That is the entire discipline of significance testing, a formal boundary agreed upon ahead of time, rather than negotiated after the fact.
For those just tuning in, that means Gottfried is promising the goalposts get bolted down before the game begins, which would be a comfort if I had not personally watched him loosen a few bolts in round 3.
I loosened nothing. I explained why one data point does not overturn a calibration record. There is a considerable difference between moving a goalpost and refusing to be fooled by a single kick.
There is also a considerable difference between refusing to be fooled and refusing to ever be caught, and I have yet to see you tell this audience which one you actually are.
Let me offer the cheap seats, the example Popper himself was fondest of. Since apparently we are summoning his ghost so thoroughly tonight, we may as well do him justice. Popper contrasted astrology, which can explain any outcome after the fact, favourable or unfavourable, with a genuine science that stakes its reputation on a specific, narrow prediction in advance. His favourite counterexample was Einstein, David, whose theory of general relativity predicted starlight would bend by a precise, specific amount during a solar eclipse, a prediction confirmed by Eddington's expedition in 1919, and Popper adored it precisely because the theory could so easily have failed that test, and did not.
A fair example, Gottfried, and precisely the one I intend to turn against you. An astrologer explains a bad week and a good week with equal ease, never once caught, and I put it to this audience that a forecast surviving both a win and a loss inside its stated distribution is doing exactly the same trick with better tailoring.
The difference, David, is that astrology offers no advance mechanism by which it could ever be shown wrong, while my calculus offers precisely such a mechanism, a stated probability checked against a long-run frequency, using a threshold agreed upon before the results ever arrive. That is the entire discipline of statistical significance.
Then explain the mechanism plainly for the folks who have never sat through a statistics lecture and do not intend to start tonight.
Gladly. Before the trial begins, you agree on a threshold, commonly a 5% chance of being fooled by ordinary randomness, and only if the observed result falls outside that threshold do you declare the hypothesis meaningfully challenged. It is a bright line drawn in ink before either of us knows how the story ends.
A bright line drawn by the very community whose reputation depends on the line rarely being crossed. Gottfried, I have watched enough professions grade their own homework to know how durable that kind of brightness tends to be.
Then you are no longer arguing with my mathematics, David. You are arguing with the integrity of the men who apply it, which is a considerably different complaint than the one you opened this series with.
Perhaps it always was that complaint, Gottfried, dressed up as a complaint about mathematics, because mathematics sounds so much harder to argue with than mere men.
An accusation that men can be dishonest is not an argument against the tool they use, David. A corrupt judge does not invalidate the law itself.
No, but a habit of corrupt judges should make any reasonable audience considerably more sceptical of how often the law declares itself satisfied.
Skepticism of men, David, not of mathematics. I will accept that distinction gladly. It costs me nothing, and it happens to be true.
Then we have finally found the 1 square foot of ground in this entire arena where neither of us needs to shout to be understood.
Do not grow too comfortable on that square foot, David. The arena is considerably larger than 1 square foot, and round 7 is where we test the rest of it.
I was never comfortable, Gottfried. Comfort is precisely the thing I have spent 4 rounds refusing to grant you.
I am the one with a mathematics degree, David. You are the one with a grudge against sunrises.
A fair trade, Gottfried, since you seem to be the one with a grudge against ever losing an argument on the record.
Let me offer the cheap seats the plain version of the disagreement, since apparently we have circled it 3 times without landing it. Popper says a theory earns its keep by risking death. I say a theory earns its keep by surviving a long enough trial, fairly graded. David says my grading system is rigged so that death never actually arrives.
That is the disagreement stated as fairly as I could have stated it myself, and I confess it cost me something to admit that.
It costs you nothing, David. Generosity has never once slowed you down before you turned around and used it as a weapon.
You know me well by now, Gottfried. 3 rounds will do that to a man.
Then let me return the courtesy properly before I demolish it. David's position, honestly stated, is that any claim which cannot be killed by a single decisive blow is not truly a claim at all, a discipline built for a battlefield rather than a laboratory.
A laboratory that never risks a single decisive blow is not a laboratory, Gottfried. It is a museum, and museums do not tell you anything about tomorrow.
Museums preserve what has already proven true, David, which is considerably more than doubt alone has ever managed to preserve.
Doubt does not need to preserve anything, Gottfried. Its entire job is to keep the shelves honest.
Honest shelves that have never once held a working forecast.
Working forecasts that have never once admitted defeat.
Round 7, David, and I suspect neither shelf nor forecast is walking out of this arena unscathed.
Neither man either, Gottfried, and for the first time tonight, I believe we finally agree on something.